We all look forward to it. Summer. Enjoying the sunshine while you are sipping your ice cold drink. The world looks so much brighter when everything is sunny and bright. But this was not the case for the people back in 1816. The people back then experienced severe climate abnormalities that we can hardly imagine. It was a year so cold and dark that food became scarce. It was snowing in places where they had never seen white dots appear out of the sky, and in some places cold rain fell from the summer skies. Skies would even turn red, and some people thought that the end of time was near. This year would forever be known as the year without a summer. Hi everyone and welcome back to a new video, the last video of 2024. And before I start, I want to thank you all for watching my videos this year and for my new subscribers. It might be one of you who's watching now. And my video about werewolves almost had 1,000 views, which is insane for my channel because normally I would have only 100 views. And if you are one of my subscribers or a frequent viewer, please let me know what you would like to see the next year on my channel. I always love suggestions and I always use them if they are, of course, something I could use for my channel. Let me know in the comments. I already mentioned the subject of today's video, which is the year without a summer. And funnily enough, not many people know that this happened. And why did it even happen? And how did the world recover from this? I will tell you all about it in this video. So let's start. If we want to know what happened, we have to go back to the beginning and to a specific point on the world map. We need to go to Indonesia and its mount named Tambora. Tambora is a volcanic mountain located on the Indonesian island Sumbawa. It's one of the highest points in all of Indonesia and it is also an active volcano, even now. With the last recorded volcanic activity recorded in 2013. But the activity that it still has is nothing compared to the activity it had in 1815. No volcanic activity on Earth ever actually is. No, also not even the Vesuvio. Tambora was 4,000 meters high and 60 kilometers in diameter and 16 kilometers in diameter at sea level, and it was densely blanketed in forests. But not long before that, people on the island and even outside the island thought that Tambora was actually inactive. There were around 10,000 people living on the island, and for them Tambora was just another mountain and not the volcano that it actually was. Perhaps they knew it was a volcano, but they didn't know that there was something lurking beneath the Earth's surface. The island was known as a small wealthy kingdom that mainly made a living by selling coffee, beeswax, pepper, cotton, timber, honey, redwood, sandalwood, incense, red dye and horses. The area was highly productive when it came to agriculture, and the people on the island were known as brusque and short-tempered. They were not easygoing people, but they were content on their little island. They had nothing to worry about. But as we know now, this would all change. We once again jump back in time from today to 2 centuries ago, when Indonesia was still the Dutch East Indies and when they didn't know the technology that we know nowadays. The technology that we have right now was something they could only dream about. Therefore, the people back then were not able to record the volcanic activity like we do nowadays. Of course, there are signs that you can see if a volcano is active or not. Sometimes they are easy to see and sometimes they are a bit more difficult to notice. The signs that you could easily spot are significant new gas emissions or unusual earthquake activity. But this doesn't always mean that a big eruption will come. Volcanoes can show these signs for hundreds or maybe thousands of years without even erupting. Therefore, it was hard for them to decide if they would act on these signs. In 1812, which was 3 years before the Tambora would erupt, it already showed signs of activity. At first, the volcano was releasing smoke. The islanders were also noticing it and it scared them a little bit. Eventually it stopped and the people thought that it was gone, so everybody just ignored it and just got on with their lives. A few years had passed and I don't know if there was any activity. I would think so, because it just doesn't stop right away. But I couldn't find information on the internet, so I can't give you the real facts. The first recorded eruption happened in 1815 on April the 5th. It was a giant eruption and it even released lava. The eruption was so loud that even the close-by islands could hear it. The Indonesian people became frightened. They thought that the sound they heard was not the sound of an erupting volcano, but the sound of cannon shots, and they thought that they were under attack. Of course, we know that it was the volcano's doing, but they didn't know that. News like that would reach them maybe days later or hours later. The next morning, ashes would fall in East Java, and the sound of detonation would still echo until the 10th of April. New evidence even suggests that the rumbles of Tambora were even heard 3,117 kilometers away in Mukdahan on the mainland. But this was not even the biggest explosion. The eruptions would intensify on the same date, so on the 10th of April. This would be known as the largest and most destructive volcanic event in recorded history. It's something we can hardly imagine, but if we have to compare it with something, we could take the Hiroshima bombing and intensify it with 25,000 times more impact. That's what the people in 1815 had to deal with, and also the following years. The eruption occurred at around 7 p.m. 3 plumes rose up and merged. Tambora didn't even look like a mountain anymore, but like a pile of lava. Pumice stones would rain down around 8 p.m. and the ash would follow around 9 or 10 p.m. 3 giant streams of lava would flow down into the forest and towards the villages. The smoke and all the materials would reach heights of 41 kilometers, and eventually a violent whirlwind ensued and hit the village of Saugur. It blew down nearly every house and would carry everything that it encountered into the air. A pyroclastic flow cascaded down the mountain and wiped out the village of Tambora, and affecting even all sides of the peninsula. The fires caused by the lava had giant waves that would kill all the islanders immediately. The island was covered in pumice stone, lava and ashes. The depth of the layer of ash was measured 50 until 60 centimeters deep and closer to the volcano even 3 meters. The falling pumice and the meshes of ash destroyed many homes. There were even 2 kingdoms located on the island named Pekat and Tambora, but they were wiped off the face of the earth, including their inhabitants and their rajas, who were the rulers of these kingdoms. Even the islands near Sumbawa experienced major consequences. The island Bali and Lombok and South Sulawesi were close by islands, and they would be covered in the same ash about 20 until 30 centimeters thick. The people who were directly covered in these ashes would not live to tell the tale. The ashes were directly fatal. The ash was so heavy that many buildings caved in and also killed the people who were inside the buildings. But most people died because of a serious famine due to the destruction of the crops. Some islands even experienced tsunamis with waves that would reach up to 4 meters high. In Batavia, a deflating rain fell, which only stopped between the 11th and the 17th of April. The islands Tambora and many of the surrounding islands were totally destroyed. And it would take a very long time before they could recover. Eventually, 117,000 people in the area died. Most of them died because of diseases that were caused by this eruption. But as I mentioned before, this was the largest and most destructive volcanic event that the world had ever seen. So of course it would not only affect Indonesia. This eruption had a magnitude of 7, which is the highest magnitude a volcano can reach. For example, if Yellowstone would erupt, it would also reach a magnitude of 7. Or if the Campiflagrai in Naples would erupt, it would also reach a magnitude of 7. Let's hope that doesn't happen. This eruption is once again the largest and most destructive eruption a volcano has ever had in recorded human history. So you can probably imagine what kind of impact an eruption like this could have on the world. The crater it left behind in the Tambora is even 7 kilometers wide. And since the eruption catapulted everything that was inside the volcano into the sky, it reached a height where the wind could not even blow it away. It even reached the stratosphere. Eventually all the particles would spread slowly during the following months and nothing could stop it. The whole world would soon face struggles that they had never experienced. And because Indonesia is located on the equator, the volcanic ashes would go to all the sides of the world. The world would be covered in a veil of ashes that would even block the sun. Especially Europe and North America were affected. The whole world cooled down at least 1 degree until 3 degrees Celsius. This would be temporarily, but long enough for catastrophic consequences. And just before the effects of this volcanic eruption would show itself to the world, the people in Europe were happy. After a very long time, the Napoleonic Wars were finally over. Husbands came home from the fighting and they could finally return to their normal life. Or so they thought. They thought that their sun was finally shining again. But in reality, the sun disappeared. And lack of sun would kill their crops. Or in some cases, especially in America, the frost would kill their crops. People who had successful crops could sell it for double the price or even more, so many poor people died of starvation. The price of bread doubled, and the price of oat even became 8 times more expensive. People were so desperate that they started to steal food, so the farmers had to hide their crops away if they wanted to sell it or eat it themselves. Desperate times ask for desperate measures. Many people decided to sell their horses because horses mainly ate oat, and that became super expensive, as I said before. And therefore it was also difficult to travel. Perhaps that's why a German man named Karl Dries was inspired to invent something that didn't require horses to travel. The bicycle! Although it's not the bicycle that we know now, but it was effective, but not as comfortable as we are used to. Many people became very hungry and sick. The citizens of Paris even started a food riot, one that wasn't seen since the French Revolution. Some Europeans decided to move to America in the hope that things would be better there. But as I mentioned before, America also suffered, especially in the northeast. It was snowing and freezing in July and many crops failed like in Europe. But in the western parts of America it was better, so many Europeans decided to immigrate to those parts. In the winter, the snow that was falling was not white but yellow because it was mixed with the ashes from the volcano. Even the trees were bare in the summer of 1816. It was misty, cloudy and dry, and there was hardly any sun. But not only America, Europe and Indonesia were affected. The rice fields in China would constantly overflow and kill all their crops. Brazil would know a drought like never before, which would also kill all their plants and of course their food resources. And as I mentioned before, people would also get sick. A lot of diseases and also new diseases spreaded like wildfire. In India there was a cholera outbreak due to the volcanic eruption, which would eventually bring it to Europe in the beginning of the 19th century. Many people thought that the end of time was near and they became very religious. They would go to the church and pray for salvation. It is believed that roughly 100,000 people died due to the eruption of Mount Tambora. But perhaps the number is even greater. It would take 3 years until everything would become normal again, but it would take even 5 years before the earth had fully recovered. Luckily, the crops started to grow again in 1817, but 1816 was really the worst year that the world had ever seen when it comes to recorded history and to natural disasters. In 1820 it was as good as over and the fear of the people was gone. I don't want to end on a negative note, so I want to tell you some good things that happened due to this eruption. Of course, it's never enough to be thankful for this eruption. These are small things like the invention of the bike that I mentioned before. Although, as a Dutchie, I'm really thankful for the invention of the bike because I use him every day. England would see beautiful sunsets during the summer of 1816. The sky was showing the strangest colors like a dark purple, dark yellow and very strong red, although they did not know why they could see it. Now we know that it is because of the ash particles in the sky. Art and literature also changed. The Roman style that ruled the art movement was heavily influenced by the colors in the sky. The blue sky would be exchanged for the colors the dark sun exposed us to. The paintings became redder and darker, a more depressing atmosphere, but still filled with hope. During this year without a summer, poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, his wife the writer Mary Shelley and poet Lord Byron decided to go on a vacation at Lake Geneva. The sky there was rainy and gloomy, so they decided to stay inside for a few days. They became very inspired by this dark weather. During this time, Mary Shelley wrote the novel Frankenstein, which is a very famous horror novel in an often stormy environment. And Lord Byron wrote a poem named Darkness, which begins, "I had a dream, which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished." This is seen as the start of the horror and science fiction genre. And I can really see why, because when I think about Dracula, I also imagine a dark red sky in a gloomy environment. And lastly, did you know that this volcanic eruption even has a Guinness World Record as the largest and most destructive volcanic event in human history? Let's hope that the Tambora will be the last volcano that will get this honor. So this was a story about the year without a summer. Weirdly enough, not many people know about this event. Wow, it impacted many parts in the world. And I knew about this when I was researching one of my first videos about the Vesuvio. And they said if the Vesuvio would erupt again, it could have consequences like the Tambora. So therefore I already knew about this. And if I think about the video about Vesuvio was I think in 2017, so it took me almost 8 years until I made this video, which is insane if you think about it. Well, I hope you enjoyed my video about this volcanic eruption, and before I go I want to wish you a very happy new year. Hopefully you will still watch my videos and I really hope that I can still make them for you. Thank you once again for this year. It was amazing. I enjoyed it. Of course, I had the scare that my channel was removed, but let's hope that won't happen again. If you like this video, please give me a like, a thumbs up I mean. And if you liked even more, you can subscribe to my channel. That would help me out a lot. And please let me know in the comments if you know any new subjects that I could cover in a new video. I will also go further with my Midst of the Sea videos and perhaps some other subjects. I already have a few in mind, but I won't tell you. You will see it for yourself. I'm really thankful for the growth that my channel is going through, and I really hope to see you in the next year. Have a good New Year's Eve. Bye.